So your shoes are on the way or they're already in your warehouse and you're starting to sell. Now, the next thing you want to start thinking about, or hopefully you've already thought about, is the whole supply chain math. So, how does it work? When do you consider when you should restock? And how do you calculate all the math and the costs related to it? So, today we're going to talk about two main concepts. One is the reordering point. When are we supposed to reorder? How do we calculate that? And number two, how do we start negotiating terms for perhaps a second or third order with your supplier? Hi, this is Ivan. We've been doing supply chain and sourcing for more than 30 years. So if you have any questions or if you're interested in this type of content, please like and subscribe and share. We talk a lot about supply chain strategy and things that, maybe first time founders, or if you're not a founder yet, but you're thinking about creating your own brand, whether it could be a footwear, clothing, or anything, it's broadly applicable. Our specialty is in footwear, but it is applicable to many things, especially the concepts that we talk about. So please stay tuned and keep watching. When we talk about supply chain math, there's a lot of different concepts and ways you can think about this. And previously, we already talked about, how do you think about the actual cost of your product? It's not just the FOB cost, but also the landed cost, storage costs, and whatnot. So this again is also something you have to think about is the sell through rate and when do you reorder. So it's something that we call the reorder point. And if from a broad start from a broad formula that could be applicable to many, but you might need to add your own maybe elements into it based on your own product. The industry might be a bit different. But the general concept of the framework is that it should be daily unit sales times the lead time in days plus your safety stock, which should equal your reorder point. So let me say that again. So your daily unit sales times lead time in days plus your safety stock should equal your reorder point. Hi guys, so I forgot that I should put an example of actually how to use the formula. So forgive me to be a much quicker way. I'm just hand holding the camera. So just take the example of footwear, right? So let's say you sell 20 pairs a day. So 20 pairs a day times you have 90 days of lead time. You need 90 days of lead time to stock. So it actually includes factory producing it, shipping it to your destination country, getting from destination country port to your warehouse and all that. So that means it's 1,800 pairs. So I'll put the text somewhere. It will be somewhere. And in the formula for your reorder target, so you have a lead time demand of 1,800 pairs, from what we had before, 20 pairs a day times 90 days of lead time, 1,800. So 1,800 lead time demand plus your safety stock. So maybe you want, let's say 300 pairs as your safety stock. So plus that. So you'll get the reorder point of 2,100 pairs. So when you have sold down to in your inventory, you have 2,100 pairs left. That's when you should put the second order. Put the second order, not start to negotiate the second order or start discussing the second order with the factory. That's the point where you should have already negotiated, the terms, and you're just waiting to, send out the purchase order or whatever to the factory. It's 2,100 pairs. That's kind of conceptually how you use this formula. Again, to your industry, your product, it might be slightly different, or you might need to add different things in. But from a conceptual perspective, that's how this formula works and how you should think about when the reordering point is. So once you get that, your reorder point, you need to look at that and think, does it look correct? You might need to tweak it or whatnot, but you have to have that concept because it's relevant to your working capital. So there's a working capital crunch. You might need to think of it because a lot of the time you might have to pay the factory for your second production even before you've gotten all the money back from your sales, because it's possible that your sales, depending on what platform you use, who are your I guess distributors that you sell through or retail, do you also need to wait 30 days, 60 days, or 90 days to get the money? So this is a consideration you need to have when you think about the working capital. How much money am I getting back? At what time frame? When do I need to order? Do I have enough money? If not, then how do I, for example, finance that or think of another way to do that? Now, speaking of financing or how to, work with the factories on the second run when potentially you might not have the funds or all the funds available already, goes down to, how should we go about negotiating terms for a second run or a third run or beyond? So hopefully now you've already, worked with this factory and you had your first run and, everything is good. There weren't any major hiccups. So before you place that order or before hopefully your reorder point, so you don't want to negotiate when it's already time to reorder. You should do it ahead of time. You negotiate with the factory and you will ask for, anywhere from like a 20% down payment first or 10%, and then the rest after, inspection. Or try to work out, oh, is it possible to start providing you with net 30 terms, meaning that after you receive all the goods, you have 30 days to provide them the money, or depending on how you count the 30 days, that is also needs to be very specific. If it's FOB, doesn't mean 30 days after they've gotten it to the local port, because if that's the 30 days, then basically before the goods maybe arrive at your own destination port, that's maybe already 30 days, because some places it does take 20 to 30 days by ocean freight to get to the destination country. So you also have to be explicit. Net 30 days counting from when, or is it net 60 days? So of course, best is longer is best, of course, but for a factory that has only worked with you for the first couple of runs, it might be very hard to get them to agree to, a more than a 30 day, a 60 day or a 90 day. So, again, this is something that you need to negotiate ahead of time before your actual reordering point. As I understand, there are various other services as well that are kind of like financing companies or financing, whether it be e-commerce brands or whatnot, that if that's a concern for you, you can look into in your local country. So today was a much shorter video, mainly because I do want to quickly, touch upon more of the thinking in terms of when to restock, and when you restock, what you should think about, and the kind of a little bit of the math concept behind it. So you first have the idea. Of course, there are a lot of resources out there. Just by googling it, you'll probably find a lot of articles and much more detail, specifically maybe even to your industry or your product, that people have written. So you should go and look for those as well, and learn more about it in terms of the specific math. And as I said, most of what I said today was more like conceptual math, what you should be looking at and how to conceptually calculate it and think about it. But there will be elements that maybe is more specific to your product, or your industry, that you want to put in there so that you can calculate a more accurate reorder point. And also when you negotiate with factories, you again start thinking, planning ahead, talking to them ahead. You don't have to immediately negotiate, but you can perhaps after you get your first batch and start selling, you might also want to show them some data that, hey, it's selling pretty well. So they can start to understand, okay, this customer might start to order from me. And if it's selling well, then this could turn into a longer term business. So the factories like to see that, and you should provide some data to them of what you can. I am not saying you should provide them with all the data, but because this is there's some proprietary data, so provide to them what you can, but just to show them, hey, it's selling well, or how's the turnover going, what's the sales looking like. You can give some you don't have to be super specific numbers, but some estimates, or just some broad range numbers, so they know how it's going. And if they understand your data and know how perhaps well you're selling, you're looking more to be a long-term customer, long-term partner to them, then later on in the negotiation process, it could be smoother, and they have all that context there. It's much better than going in cold and disappearing after the first order and coming back in 3 months and telling them, hey, I want a second order, but now I want net 30-day terms. It'll be much harder for them to wrap their head around, the negotiation Please like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions about anything in this video, or you have any questions about anything about sourcing, supply chain strategy in general, please drop a comment below, and I'll see you all in the next video.